Hello, good evening. Right, so in a confusing piece of admin, I started reading this book before Paul Magrs, who another Paul kindly has told me how to pronounce Paul Magrs' name in the comments, got in touch about the last video to suggest he enjoyed the last video, and then Libby took the mickey out of me for reading another book by Paul Magrs, see previous thing, thinking that I was like, sucking up to a Doctor Who published author, but no, I started this before the very lovely Paul Magrs got in touch. Anyway, yes, okay, hello. Hi, I've been reading this, Sick Building by Paul Magrs. And I had a number of, so whilst I've been reading this, I've been thinking about how would I talk about it, and I had a number of different ideas. So my first idea was I was going to talk about how I like what I call rescuing Doctor Who books from charity shops, which is something of a fascination of mine. I sort of pop into charity shops. There's a few around where I live, and I'll pop in, and then if I rescue a book, oh my gosh, the excitement, it is immense. And the point I was going to make is this particular series of books were for a long time a mainstay of what you could find in charity shops, and they were the ones released in the first, let's say, 3 maybe 4 years of the revival of the show, and you could find them everywhere. And that was partly because they were on, I seem to recall, they were on like sale in those things that workplaces, and they have like a basket of books, and you go, oh, I want those. They seem to be in those and all sorts. When the show was massive, Eccleston, Tennant transition, all that. So that was my first idea. Then I was going to talk about how these books, I think, were, when the show came back, joyous in so much as they suggested straight away that Doctor Who was an arena for stories, a really vibrant ground for people to create and make ideas happen, and a playground for writers and creatives to come up with new ideas. And I remember when Virgin started doing, obviously, the new adventures, which I talk about quite a lot because they're very important to me, but they started doing the missing adventures, when they started telling stories of old Doctors and adventures that they'd had that hadn't existed, and it was thrilling. And the fact that when the show was revived and it came back and it started doing stories, brand new stories in book form for somebody like me, a librarian, a book, and yet the wider point I was going to make was that maybe, with hindsight, maybe that wasn't the canny move. Maybe the canny move back then would have been doing the Target book straight away, as in retelling the stories, because, I mean, I didn't read these at the time. I'm just coming around to them now, 20 whatever years after the event. And I'm curious to know, had they been Target books back then, would I have read them like I read them when it was McCoy's time? There's something about when you're a young person having that immediate connection to something. And I remember that there were books written about the stories. Humphrey read one about the Time of Angels, and he knows that story really well because he read the book. Anyway, that was the other idea. Because I have really enjoyed this book, okay? But the wider point I was going to make was that it is a book that is evoking the show. It is does a fantastic job of being a story that could fit seamlessly. And that's a bad, I'm putting it on a shelf alongside the stories of the show. And that's great. Don't get me wrong, that's great. But the Target books that are most interesting are the ones that push at the edges. And in many ways, the Doctor Who stories that are most interesting are the ones that just push a little bit. So the idea that there were going to be a series of books that could just so neatly fit, they didn't interfere with the overall arch of the story, with hindsight, could have been boring. This is not a boring book, but you take my point. That was until this evening when I got to page 100 and something, not very far off the end. And something happens in this book to the character that, if I was being hypercritical, I would have said had least resonated with me. It was so unexpected and so grim, and nothing I think that RTD would have played with. Moffat might have played with it. Hinchcliffe, in that era of Doctor Who, Holmes, Hinchcliffe, might have played with it. But there is something that happens 60 pages are on before the end where you just go, even me, seasoned Doctor Who, go, ew, that is deeply uncomfortable. So all these premises go out the window because much like Gareth Roberts' Only Human, that has that sort of dual narrative, the bits with Jack having set this Neanderthal up. This book is toying with the set you've given, the blocks you've been given. Well, let's see how we can rearrange them. So anyway, listen. Let's talk about this book. So this is a great book. It is 10th Doctor and Martha. And they land on a planet. There is a huge, vast, look at that bad boy, sort of big tapeworm thing coming, and it's going to eat everything. And it just so happens on this planet, alongside loads of flora and fauna and exciting animals, there is a family, the Tierman family. The dad's called Ernest, the mom's called Amanda, and the son's called Solin, which is Colin with an S, I happen to notice. And then what we get is, as I say, a story that could very much fit in season 3 of Doctor Who. In so much as you've got Tennant bouncing around, talky, doing Tennanty things. You get that sort of slight silliness that is evocative of something like the dafter bits of, I don't know, Smith and Jones, certainly evocative of New Earth, let's say, with, and this is no spoiler, robots that are basically household items and appliances that are also robots that have their own personalities, this and the other. You get Mad Human. In my head, I cast him as Ian McKellen just because I could, which was terribly exciting. And everything kicks off. So you've got this threat from here, this house, this majestic house with all these robots and some malicious force, and this mad person, and Tennant doing his Tennanty thing. And for 95% of this book, it is a very fine evocation of that era of Doctor Who. Now, if we're being hypercritical, and I will be somewhat hypercritical here, it's so good an evocation of that era of Doctor Who that some of the problems with season 3, I think, resonate here. The most obvious one, and I feel really bad saying it, but I spoke to Liv about this previously so that I wasn't too far off the beaten track. I find Martha in this book to be a little bit simpering. Now, that is an aspect of Martha's character, which is a shame because I actually think Martha potentially is, has the potential for a great companion. But the simple fact is that, she has feelings for the Doctor, he does have feelings for her. And while that isn't really broadly drawn out, there is an awful lot of Martha just go, oh yeah, I just agree with the Doctor, which is a very Martha trait. So therefore, that fundamental issue with perhaps season 3 that, annoys Libby, less so me, is resonant in this book. There are some moments of awareness. I mean, Martha does, she's a doctor, and therefore she goes to do doctory things. Solin fancies her in the book, which is quite amusing because there's obviously a parallel there between her and her feelings towards the Doctor. But that's all by the by, because what's so great about this book is the fact that you've got an on-form Tennant doing his Tennanty things. You've got a ridiculous but also very empathetic setup. You have some beautiful moments of sort of noble sacrifice, and you have some magnificent moments of quite, viscerally drawn terror and excitement and this, that and the other. And then there is this moment that I feel is Paul Mars taking the advantage of, look, I've played the game here. This is a story that you could do on the telly, apart from this bit. And there is a bit that genuinely made me go, ooh. And it was great. And I really, really have enjoyed it. And so there we go. So listen, why did I read this book? Again, Paul Mars got in touch and I really appreciated that, and it was a nice thing to happen. But I read this book because I so enjoyed Doctor Who in Wonderland, and I wanted to see what this particular author could do in another sphere, in another type of Doctor Who book. Like I say, this type of Doctor Who book doesn't quite, as a concept, doesn't quite tick the boxes that other formats of Doctor Who book have done for me. I think the Doctor Who Wonderland of the classic literature stuff really works for me. And some of those old Missing Adventures one really tick the box. But whereas these have to be on rails, these really do have to be on rails to a certain extent, I sometimes feel in the few that I've read, and let's be honest, I've not read Masters, that I'm not entirely sure that always befits the book. I'd be interested to know how the authors felt. Well, obviously, how would you feel? Hi, I'm from BBC Publishing. Do you want to write a Doctor Who book? Hell yeah, I'm going to write a Doctor Who book. Of course, you'd feel amazing about that. So there we go. Yes, I had a great time reading this book. Fantastic. Get to it. Seriously. Enjoy the very, very season 3-ness of it. Enjoy the fact that you've got, an opportunity to see the Tenant Doctor in his pomp doing his thing, and then get to page 100 or whatever it is where you just go, ooh, it's really, really, really good. It's really, really, really good. Right. Last book related video for a while, principally because I've got other things I need to read and want to read, including Libby's favourite book from last year, which I've promised I'll be reading for months and months. But anyway, hope you're well. See you later. Cheerio, bye.